Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the hearts of the West Midlands in the city of Birmingham, the bright, active and energetic city of Birmingham and the West Midlands. And also welcome to our listeners that are tuned into us down in Milton Keynes and Luton and 105.1. We have a live session here with you this evening, so please do ring us in and join in the conversation on 0121 772 8892. That's 0121 772 8892. The managers are in the studio, the phone lines are on, they're ready at their emails as well. If you want to email, it's info@unityfm.net. And we would like to have a really good conversation, interactive conversation, and get you involved this evening in how you can change things for the next generation in regards to our planet, in regards to the crisis we're talking about there now, the emergency crisis. It actually is an emergency crisis. And people are waking up, I think, more and more. Not our guest, because she's been active for many years on this, but recently I've seen messages from lots of other organizations and people that are really interested and knowing what can we do. It's not too late. Come, let's do something now, because we do need to act now. I've been intrigued watching some TV programs about the ice melting and the poles and how that's affecting our environment. And there's a lot more happening. And of course, our guest is going to tell us all about this, what's happening and what are the causes and why we need to be proactive and proactive now. We cannot be reactive anymore. It is too late to be reactive. So with that, let me welcome Joe Hindley.
Hello.
Hello, Joe. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen.
I was just going to say, Joe, that people might hear your voice and be thinking, oh, I know that voice. This is often due to talking about babies and birth and antenatal and postnatal issues and home birth, because you've been on the show many times before, but they may not always have heard you in this respect.
No, I haven't been very public in this respect until more recently, and I'm still trying to find my way, find my voice on this area, because it's I've been quite conversant about birth and all that sort of thing, but this has become the issue that I really feel I need to talk and share with people about now.
And so right too. Can you tell us a bit about why we need to be talking about this now? Because just imagine there's people tuned in this evening that have never heard anything before, never thought about the climate, getting on with their daily life, busy with their kids, don't have time to watch TV or read a newspaper, and this is the first time that they're listening to something.
Yes, well, I just wanted to pick up immediately on your intro, really, which is a really good lead in, and absolutely all those things, everybody's very busy just with day-to-day managing and survival, getting their food on the table, and, especially after the pandemic, so many people have been affected so terribly with loss of loved ones and all the rest, and just getting through the pandemic has been, well, and still it's ongoing, so many people who are ill and sick. But just, you're saying for the next generation, well, the really disturbing and alarming thing, and this is, bringing together my role as a midwife, is we could be the last generation. So, we think about our children and our children's children, but in reality, the state of the world at the moment and of the planet and the way that we're living means that this could well be the end of life as we know it on Earth. So it's absolutely pressing beyond any sort of comparison, the urgency of our situation. And sadly, it could well be that it's an impossible situation, that we're already past the tipping points for so many of the things that are happening with the ice melting and sea rising and the forests all burning, that we may have passed the point of no return, that we can't stop it. But that's not to say that we shouldn't act now to do what we can, because we need to try to mitigate the extremities of what can happen. Mm-hmm. So, the environment has being something lovely, and to watch on television, David Attenborough, Life on Earth, lovely animal programs, and, thinking, oh, how lovely, how beautiful. But actually, the situation, as David Attenborough himself has highlighted to us over his recent programs, is dire. And, of all those lovely wild animals that he shows us on the programs, in fact, some incredible number, sort of, I think it's 96% of all animals on Earth are not wild animals. They are pigs and cows and sheep. We're lost all the wild animals, and the birds, most of the birds that we have on the planet at the moment are chickens, are poultry. Most of our species of birds we have lost because of our appetites for eating meat. And so it's not just our own possible last generation. We're talking about life on Earth and species going extinct. We're living through the 6th mass extinction on the planet Earth. There have been 5 times previously on the planet Earth when there's been a mass extinction of life on Earth, and one of the most serious of those, there was 98% of all life on Earth was lost. And the tragedy of it is we could well be heading for that.
Wow. Are we ready for that? I'm listening here 5 p.m. on Tuesday evening, early September 2021.
Oh,
is this?
I'm sorry, breaking this through to you if you haven't heard it. And this is the tragedy and the dreadful thing, that the truth is not and has not been being told. We have not been hearing about this on our news. And that's despite the fact that the United Nations at the beginning of last month has published, and it was their second really serious report. They published the previous one 4 years ago, but they published the International Panel on Climate Change's report, which is documenting all the scientific evidence about climate change and saying it's code red for humanity. Now that hit the headline maybe for a day, but it's not hitting the headlines every day. Although the BBC is getting better, but it's still not to the fore there with every newsreel. We're hearing about a lot of terrible severe weather events that are happening, and it's just keeping our finger on the pulse of our planet, of what's happening, that this is what's happening. Things that were once in a lifetime severe weather events are seemingly happening, well, every year, every week at the moment we're seeing, aren't we? Terrible things happening around our Earth.
Absolutely. And food chains, as you say, have been disturbed because for whatever reason, either the fires or whether it's just the ice melts, that something affects a food chain down the line. And we know one little, where it starts small, but it goes big like this, then after that, the effects of that. It's great the way you bring in your medical knowledge into this, because, when you said your fingers on the pulse, and we've done the diagnosis really, but we haven't done or started the treatment. We haven't even tested or piloted any of the treatment really when we're talking about it. There's a little bit here and there, I suppose. There's electric cars and things which we can talk about, but we're not, like if you were in a hospital, you would have, I'm putting it relate to a patient, maybe you diagnose a problem or an illness, or like even COVID, you have a group of people coming together, experts coming together and working quickly on that to then treat the problem, put process in place, put strategies in place, put things in place. Do you think that's happening now at the moment? Like if we replicate that within government, within councils, within the leaders of our countries?
Unfortunately not. No, I don't think it is happening. In a few countries around the world, there are creative things happening. I would particularly cite countries that are prioritizing well-being as their measure of success performance over GDP, over money making. New Zealand, Iceland, some other countries as well have been championing this as a way forward, where they see that people's health and well-being, and actually the physical environment's health and well-being has not been being cared for by big business and by GDP. So, those are hopeful measures, and there's a petition circulating at the moment to say, come on, we need to do this here. Because unfortunately, our politics is driven by short-term goals, and it's very much in cahoots with big oil, big business, and big capitalism. And it's that sort of big business that's actually destroying us and killing people now already. And you're right, yes, as healthcare professionals, there's a real, I feel a real sense of urgency about this, and not me alone. I don't know if people saw in London over the last couple of weeks ago, there was Extinction Rebellion. We're very active in London, trying to highlight the issues, especially the role of the City of London and this, the Bank of England and the banks, absolutely how they are financing and underwriting coal, oil and gas investment, and not just current projects, but new exploration and projects that are releasing more CO2 in the atmosphere. And one of the biggest investment banks, JP Morgan, who's since the Paris Agreement of 2016, when there were accords agreed to reduce carbon investment, fossil fuel investment, they've invested £317 billion in coal, oil and gas. So it was actually a focus of an action taken by doctors and other healthcare professionals of Extinction Rebellion, and you can see the reports of that action in The Guardian and in The Independent, where doctors and healthcare professionals had a die-in outside JP Morgan to highlight this extreme, investing in our complete destruction, and the consequences of that for vulnerable communities, especially children. And it's ironic that in the same week as pretty much the same week as the United Nations report and this action, we were focusing on the UNICEF report that came out of the UN, just saying that 2.2 children in the world are at extremely high risk from impacts of climate change and air pollution at this moment. And in 33 countries around the world, over 1 billion children are at risk of about 3 to 4 impacts simultaneously. So it is just, it's extreme. So if we were in the emergency room at a hospital, the alarms are all ringing, and, we are... It really is the most extreme situation of the planet. In fact, at this rebellion in London, there was a very creative group of people from Worcester who were dressed up. I mean, we were genuine medics and healthcare professionals outside JP Morgan, but this group from Worcester were imaginary planetary medics, and they had a globe, a world that they had painted, and a big great globe they were carrying around on a stretcher, and they had sort of resuscitation sort of jump leads to resuscitate this poor old globe, who they were acting out with their performance protest that the globe is sick.
Wow, it's a good analogy, and it's a good, I can have that picture in my head now. What were they, or what would you have if you had the choice, or if you were there being a decision maker on that emergency trolley, and who would you have with you, around you, as part of that emergency team? So the team and the trolley to get to resuscitate the environment.
Well, I think, as a midwife, my angle of things has very much been not the emergency room, but sort of prevention in the first place. So, about, health promotion and healthcare, keeping healthy, because my job as midwife has been looking after women having their babies. And, some midwives work in delivery suite and in intensive care, when things have gone wrong, looking after women where they've had really traumatic experiences of childbirth and stuff. But I've been with the home birth team, as I've talked about so much. So, my big thing has been keeping things normal and averting emergencies. So in some ways, that's why I'm jumping up and down so much, saying, we needed to have acted 50 years ago, actually, but, we need to act now. But in terms of the emergency room, and what we do, the evidence is out there, and there are very, very practical and they appeal to me as midwife because they're straightforward, basic, not high-tech things that need to be done. Interestingly, people may well have been affected by some of the demonstrators who were blocking the roads around the M25 yesterday, protesting for Insulate Britain. Now, it's controversial, that form of action and how it impacts on people, but what they're protesting for, as the LBC radio person James O'Brien reported, they are right. The protest is irrelevant. It's absolutely essential. It's important. It's inconveniencing people and, causing major disruption, but the action needs to be taken. And I think the ironic and sort of, the sort of shocking aspect of that action is that their demand is so basic. The demand is insulate homes, insulate Britain. And it's like, why is the government not doing that? Why have we not been doing that? It's like, come on, we need to, that's one of the most practical things that could make a massive, massive difference. I've got a few statistics if I can find them here. I'm not that good at statistics. I've done quite well so far with saying a few things to you. But, we've got...
I'm glued to you at the moment, indeed.
Here we are.
I'm sure our listeners are as well. Listeners, Let us take the opportunity to remind you of the phone number again to join the conversation. It's 0121 772 8892. Please do ring in and tell us, have you changed? Have you done anything different in the last few weeks when you've heard about Extinction Rebellion or other environmental things that are happening? And have you thought about your life and what you're doing differently? So please do ring in and let us know. Sorry, Joe. Yes, you were saying.
I found it here. There's a thing called Households Declare, and the statistic is that 20%, that's about a fifth of the total emissions of carbon CO2 emissions in the UK, come from our 29 million homes that are heated by gas boilers that emit carbon dioxide. So, if we were to insulate those homes, it's very basic. And, maybe we need to insulate 1 million a year. It would make it take us 29 years, but, we need to be on it starting now to make our homes efficient. At the moment, so many people are suffering fuel poverty. They're having to choose in the wintertime between heating their home or buying food. And in the summertime, even our temperatures here are getting more extreme and our homes are getting too hot. And air conditioning isn't the answer. It's just that creates more CO2, which makes the situation worse. I don't know if people saw on the news yesterday, obviously this was reported, the Insulate Britain thing then, but just before it, there was footage from Karachi showing the experience of people in Karachi yesterday, where they're experiencing extreme heat and just how unbearable it is living in that extreme heat. Now, I've been participating with you, Kathleen, on the WhatsApp support groups for pregnant and postnatal women through COVID, supporting them with their anxieties and concerns. Even like this summer we've had here, so many women worrying about their babies, they're too hot when it's too hot and how to keep them cool. And there's footage of a poor woman in Karachi, just how to keep her babies cool, this heat is unbearable. And unfortunately, this extreme heat is already impacting affecting Nigeria, India, Pakistan, Karachi, sub-Saharan Africa. Some parts of the world are not just becoming inhospitable areas to live, but actually uninhabitable. And so that's meaning that thousands, millions of people are going to be on the move because they cannot stay where they have lived for generations. So insulate our homes, that's a basic thing we can do.
So number one, that's a really good point. And it's, it's something that we can all do and think of, or even think if we're turning on the heating, do I need it that high? Can I make it a degree less? Because I'm sure we can. Can I put on a jumper?
Yeah.
We're not putting on heating to go around in t-shirts.
Yes. The thing is, though, I think, and this is the upsetting aspect of it, is over all these years, and still there's a sort of, there's a very almost playing with our minds way in which these things have been talked about, where it's been turned around and put on individuals as it being an individual responsibility. So, saying, come on, insulate your home. Well, why should people who can't afford to insulate their home be being told that? It's the role of our government is to look after us and to invest in things that will make our lives tolerable and possible. And so it's a role, I'd say, of government here to make it possible for people to. People shouldn't have to finance this themselves. It needs to be financed centrally by government, and it shouldn't just be something that people dabble in. Oh, I've put in double glazing or triple glazing, but it needs to be comprehensive across the board, and for people to all be able to do this properly. So that's just one example. And then, I think that there is tremendous expertise. Well, people need to be educated about the issues in the first place so that they can get together. And this has been one of the things that's been promoted is for people to be involved, to make their own decisions about what needs to be done through perhaps citizens' assemblies, that sort of thing. About transport, you've mentioned about electric cars, but really we need to be looking at basic transport provision for all. People shouldn't be having to fork out for massive electric cars. What about free public transport for all? Free buses, free train travel, or some basic things that again will allow people to manage their lives and get cars off the road, and to decarbonise our train system, and how these things are led. I think one of the things that's difficult is that there's been a lot of hype about new technologies that are coming down the line that will save us all, and if only we can sort of get these new technologies, they will save us, make all the difference. But actually, the basic things we have at our fingertips already, we need to do, but we need to do them now. We need to reduce, not reduce, but drop to zero our emissions overnight to make the difference we need, because we're already looking at we're already at 1.2 degrees of warming, and we're looking at over 2 degrees of warming the way that things are going, which is serious.
Very serious indeed. Very serious.
So yes, we need to. These are things, and then also, about our diets, we need to change our habits radically, because the factory farming that produces the meat and the food that we're eating is a massive emitter of carbon dioxide. So they're very challenging things. People don't like changing their habits. I've taken a long time. I'm pretty much vegan now, but still eat occasional bits of cheese. I do like a bit of cheese, but I'm very just making much more conscious all my choices at every twist and turn. But again, it's about incentivizing these habit changes with leadership with example. We made the changes. I think one of the most inspiring things that we've had over the last, I can't remember when it was it a decade ago when we banned smoking in public places? Mm-hmm. Something like that. Yeah. I mean, that was just, we couldn't have imagined prior to that that change could have been brought about.
Exactly.
And that was very positive.
And if it was, and everybody spoke about it, that it would never work, it would never happen, how could this happen? And it has. You know, I remember traveling on airplanes where you had your smoking zone and your non-smoking zone.
Yeah.
How did we survive? You know, because even in the non-smoking zone, you still had the smoke coming over you. But it has changed, and we've changed so much in this time. We're coming into a commercial break. We've only got a few seconds left, so in this break, listeners, please do tune in to us after the commercial break. Do ring in. Do join in the conversation. Our number again is 0121 772 8892. Jo is here with me for the next half an hour. You can see how she's full of knowledge, and let us see what else we can put on the cross chart, inshallah, in the next break, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 if you're tuned in on Inspire FM to us this evening. We are live here on air. We are from our own homes, so we are practicing what we're talking about this evening, about the environment and reducing carbon footprint and all the things that we can do. So we have taken that action ourselves this evening and not made that journey to the studio where we can do this online indeed and try and help the environment the bit we can. I have with me Jo Hindley, as we mentioned in the first half of the show. You usually know Jo as a midwife, and she comes on the show talking about home births, etc. But this evening she has really given me so much knowledge, and I'm sure you also, about the environment and the emergency we're sitting in right now and how to change that and the statistics behind it. And actually pondering over the break there, and we had some conversations, but also I was pondering and thinking about what you were saying. I was saying that people would be depressed, and people could be depressed. Listen about this. And you were saying, Jo, what were you saying to me?
Well, I was saying absolutely, and it's a completely normal reaction, and it's a necessary, natural reaction when people wake up to the reality of the situation. And people need to be supported with this, and to support each other. We need to talk, we need to share, we need to grieve, because actually it's a state of grief that we are now living in. And we're grieving for our world, our home, and some people are grieving for it in a much more immediate state of loss, where they've experienced floods, as in Germany, and ice in parts of Iceland where the ice is melting and people don't have the ice in the way they had, or whatever it is, or their homes with the fire. But you know, even those of us living in Birmingham who haven't been immediately affected by something very, very severe weather and terrible, we are in touch with our fellow human beings, and even though we might not have it to the fore of our mind, we're aware of this sense of grief. And I was just saying that it wasn't a coincidence, I don't think, that with this gathering of medics that I was part of in London over the last fortnight, doctors and healthcare professionals for Extinction Rebellion, there was a high proportion of psychiatrists and psychologists who are part of it, because they are meeting people whose mental health is being affected adversely by the severe situation we're living in. And that's the severe situation we're living in terms of people struggling just with their daily lives because of the gross health inequalities we have as well. And also as then people wake up to climate grief, or whatever you call it. I know for myself, when I first came in touch with this reality, it was a couple of years ago. In fact, it was one of David Attenborough's programs that woke me up to it. And it was the footage that he showed of bats I'm not quite sure, I think it was in Australia, where the temperature had risen with a really high heat wave, and they were falling out of the tree and dying. And these female bats were nursing their young, so they had baby bats because they're mammals like us who were crying. And it just really suddenly it made it real in a way that I was aware of all sorts of things, but I just hadn't quite sort of clinched it. And then once I couldn't close my eyes or turn my brain off to it. And I remember feeling a sense, it was almost my first waking thought on waking up every morning thinking, my God, this is the real. This is terrible. And it reminded me of my first pregnancy when I had a miscarriage, and I'd been wanting a baby for years and years, maybe 10 years, and I got pregnant and then I miscarried. And I remember then a similar sort of feeling when I first woke up in the morning thinking, my baby's died. And it's a deep down belly grief, really. And we need to talk about it with each other. Yeah, a caller on the line, I see.
Oh, we have a caller on the line. Thank you. Gosh, I'm so intrigued in what you're saying. I'm forgetting the messages here. Caller, are you on the line? Can you hear us? Welcome.
Yes, I can. Assalamu alaikum. Hello, Joe. How are you?
Hi, lovely you've joined us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this vital message. And I was just listening to you moments ago before you started the story about David Attenborough's footage, but you just reminded me and actually sort of evoked feelings in me about how the climate has changed. And you mentioned that we can't really feel it and see it in Birmingham, but actually while I was growing up, I wanted to share that while I was growing up, winter was winter and summer was summer. And if you actually reflect back on that, the seasons have changed. They're sort of like amalgamated into each other. And we don't really get the real summers that we used to get while I was growing up. Now, I'm not going to disclose how old I am, but that should indicate how old I am. But you can actually still feel it here in Birmingham, the climate change. But my question really to you, Joe, is that, okay, somebody who's not even thought about this process of changing and being environmentally friendly, what are the small daily steps we can take? I know you probably mentioned, transport and things like that, and you probably mentioned it later on in the program, but what can we do on a daily basis, very, very small changes, to actually start along this path of looking after our environment?
Absolutely. Lovely question. And that's something we were just touching on, Kathleen and I, in the break, thinking, what can we do? And I think, there are lots and lots of lovely things that you can do. And I think, that's all part of a sort of therapeutic process for individuals, and then coming together as communities to do those things. And then we need to keep in frame the big things that government needs to do and put pressure on. So, just starting with practical things, it's bringing to mindfulness every single thing that we do and how we live our lives. It's about thinking about where you choose to live and the location of the school that you choose to send your children to, how far, if they can walk to school, all the better, if they can cycle, if you can avoid the car journeys. Interestingly, I've got a leaflet here actually, which is published by Mums for Lungs, which is talking about how, if you are driving, that the air pollution can be 3 times higher inside your car than if you're outside the car, walking or scooting or cycling. And, the devastating effects of air pollution on young people. It counts for 64,000 deaths in the UK per year. And there's this very, very, she's not by any means alone, but there's a girl who died in 2013, and we should have loads more, but her mother campaigned that she should have air pollution on her death certificate as cause of death. She died of an asthma attack. But so thinking about our transport, thinking about our choices when we go shopping, thinking about the manufacturing process of goods that we buy, how carbon intensive has that process been? How much packaging has what you're choosing to buy got? Can you buy locally? Can you buy from your own little shop round the corner? How many sort of goods and stuff have you got churning away, emitting, high levels of using up lots of electricity in your home. Do you have a massive, great big freezer? Do you need all that freezing your food? Where you've got a shop around the corner, you could pop around the corner for something frozen that they've got in their freezer already, rather than having a freezer. Do you use a tumble dryer? Can you hang your washing out on the line? Can you do your wash at 30 degrees instead of 40 degrees? Can you use washable nappies for your baby? Can you obviously, lots of women breastfeed, and it's not always straightforward and easy for people, but, can you breastfeed and get support that you need to breastfeed? So it's thinking about all the twists and turns. If you're cooking a meal, can you leave out meat? Can you leave out the dairy? Can you choose to have a meat-free Mondays? That's been a bit of a thing. Choosing your clothes. Can you decide not to buy any more new clothes? Not to say you don't need any new clothes, because you can buy old clothes. In charity shops have such a fantastic lot of array of clothes, and then you also are giving to charity in your purchase. Can you learn to make do and mend? Can you patch? Can you darn? My mum's been such an ecologist, environmentalist over all her years. She's 94 now. She used to never waste water. She had a bucket in the kitchen. If you've got spare water, put it in the bucket. You can use it then to water the plants instead of running the tap. Can you put some cold water in the fridge in a flask rather than have to run the tap before you actually get the water cold? So many little things. I'm just thinking quite randomly. Can you learn to grow some vegetables yourself? So those vegetables don't have any food miles and you've grown them yourself. Get your fingers dirty, get in touch with the soil. And those sorts of things are really therapeutic then too. Actually, your own growing, and sharing with others, talking, asking each other, how are you feeling? With the ups and downs of these things. So many things. What else?
There's so many things, and you're just talking about some of them. I know your mother was Irish like myself, but actually you're bringing right down memory lane, because where we lived when I was a child, we didn't have running water until we moved house, and we actually had to go. I remember walking as a child to the spring to collect water, like as you in the third world country, and you would make sure that every drop of that water was precious to you, because you didn't want to go back again for it, and have more water. So I think we need to be thinking of that. We need to be more active like that. I don't know if our listeners still on the phone or not.
That, because when you do your teeth, do you have to have the tap running? Just wet your toothbrush. And yes, are you still there, listener? Does that give you some ideas, things?
I think our
maybe she's gone. It doesn't matter. That was a lovely question. Thank you. And I hope that gives you some ideas. And there's a really good, if you Google, I think it's called Climate Action Network, West Midlands Climate Action Network. There's a really good infographic that just flags up so many different things you can do, personal actions. But then it's getting involved politically, at a community level, to come together, because the way ahead is going to be challenging, and we need to build community, we need to build relationships with our neighbours so we can support each other. And we need to do that now, because people are already challenged and struggling. And I've got a neighbour, I'm not very good at growing vegetables yet. I've got a lot to learn. I've always been good at pulling things up but not planting things. But so she's bringing me around green beans, and she's teaching me things, and I've put down cardboard on a sort of area of the ground to suppress the buttercups that are completely taken over that area. And then she said to me, she's going to order some manure, and then I'm going to put some on top of the cardboard and have this no-dig plot, and I'm going to grow some of my own stuff. I've never done it before, but she's inspired me, and we need to help each other. When a friend's washing machine's broken down, then, say, come and use my washing machine. Mine's working at the moment. Maybe mine will break down next week. Perhaps I can borrow yours then, or you can help me with something else. We need relationships. We very much do. And then we need to write to our MPs. One of the most important things at the moment that we need to do, and I know my MP has signed up, Tahir Ali, for Hall Green. I'm on to him all the time about things, but we've got this bill that's sort of going through, slowly chugging along with Parliament, trying to get, it's got cross-party support, but we need every MP to support it, which is the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. And if you can look it up, and there's CEE bill now, net sort of coalition that's supporting this. Check if your MP has signed up to it, and if they haven't, hold them to task. Say, come on, I want you to sign up for this for the sake of humanity, for humankind, and for life on Earth.
Definitely, that is a great way of getting people involved and people doing something. And you mentioned lots of wonderful things there, you know, growing our own fruit and veg, maybe having chickens if you can, have your own hens, so you get your own eggs. You know, so we can be more sustainable. We can go back to these things instead of throwing out things and buying something new. I love the satisfaction of doing something, upscaling something and decorating it or keeping going. It's a very personal satisfaction to me to do that. I get lots of enjoyment out of it. I'm sure others would as well, rather than changing things. And do we need to change things so much in our house? You know, do we need to change and make new everywhere, however it is? What can we do to upscale or use other things that we have in the house and redo them again and make something useful out of them? So
absolutely, we need to turn around the throwaway culture that we've had, where we've just felt that, oh, if it's broken, just chuck it, because there's stacks, there's piles of stuff of every possible sort that are just being thrown away, and we can't continue to live like that. Each of those, particularly electronic stuff, has been, you know, so much resource gone into the manufacturing of it. It's so wasteful. I mean, I had a big clear out of our tech drawer because we had various different sort of mobile phones that had died, or this, that, the other. And I know, I can't remember how you pronounce it, whether it's Sex or Kex, the exchange, it's on the high street in King's Heath, and they recycle phones, and they'll give you money for your not completely functioning phone anymore. You know, children have died mining cobalt for your mobile phone. We need to be able to value the resources that have gone into these things, to repurpose them, repair them, have them come back to life in different form. Absolutely. And there are repair workshops that are popping up around the place where people, you know, are skilled at, and it's finding the people in your own community who you know you can take stuff to repair. And then it's turning the values inward to sort of value different things, not sort of the external things. We need to start to value the important things about care and about love and about how we relate to one another with all this. And it's that's very core, isn't it? Very poignant, and very much what Muslims can identify with, indeed, and because it's really part of our faith to be doing this, to be caring and looking after each other, to be, you know, sharing wash machines, if you give an example like that, or water you give an example of, doing using a minimal amount of water. If we look at Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how he used to wudu with a smallest amount of water, and nowadays taps are left running, you know. So yeah, we need to take those examples and practice them ourselves, because it's a lot of things have already been mentioned and are in our faith, you know, so that it's so important to be re-looking at them again. And I think that's right. You know, the call to prayer, your prayer regularly. I mean, Muslim form of prayer is touching the earth, isn't it? It's like a Buddhist form. You touch the earth with prostrations, and every time you touch the earth, it's bringing to mind the holy earth, really. And I'd just like to flag up to people at the moment. So this puts it in a personal and then a national and then a global context. Last Sunday, a sacred walk, a Camino, a sacred pilgrimage walk set off from London and from Bristol to where are people walking from London and Bristol to Glasgow for the Conference of Parties, COP26, that our government is hosting in Glasgow in November, which will be gathering all these countries to be really making decisions about the crisis of our time. Whether they will make the right decisions is, we hope they'll make some right decisions, but this sacred walk, people are walking one step in front of the other, building momentum towards COP, walking along the way. People, our listeners in Milton Keynes, I think the walkers have just passed through Milton Keynes, the ones from London. They're going to be coming through Birmingham the 19th of this month, so that's next weekend, staying at churches, at other places of worship along the way. And we've got an event in Birmingham City Centre on Monday, the 20th of this month, with sharing stories really around issues, experiences about our current situation, and building momentum of the people towards supporting the politicians to make the right choices and decisions at this big conference that has the potential to make a massive difference for our future. So it's a sacred walk, and it's all faith and none coming together step by step. I think it's a very moving, interesting thing to be doing, to be walking this pilgrimage. And, you know, some Muslims do the Karbala walk? You know, pilgrimages is very much a part of lots of different religions and traditions.
There is, yes. We have to do our Umrah and our Hajj. They're both walking. And actually, although there is modes of transport there. When I did mine a few years ago, I did it as a walking Hajj. It was so nice to be able to have that ability. I probably got there quicker than the people in the buses anyway.
Yeah. I've done that, riding my bicycle as a midwife. You know, when I've been a community midwife, I've ridden my bicycle. But a lot of people in Balsall, Heath, locally here will remember me. I'm not working in community in that way quite at the moment now, because I'm working with the home birth team across South Birmingham. But I remember being called, just sort of, sometimes it's gridlock, isn't it? You can't move in a car, but I got a call saying, "Jill, are you anywhere near such and such?" And I jumped on my bike round the corner and I'm there.
Wonderful. Wonderful indeed. And there's more schemes that we can have as well of teaching people how to ride, because there's a lot of people that have missed that riding when they were a child and don't know how to ride, and maybe never had this opportunity and don't appreciate the freedom of riding. Actually, it is wonderful feeling the air going through you, and you know that freedom that you have to get from A to B, probably quicker than those cars, as you said, but also feeling the air and the breeze going through you, so that when you arrive, you're fresh and you're ready to get on with whatever it is.
Absolutely. There's some brilliant things. I know the Saheli Women's Group have been real pioneers of that with young women locally, and taking them to learn to ride their bikes in Sutton Park and parks around. And then, it's just missed my mind. I can't quite recall it. It's an acronym beginning with T. Anyway, they're doing loads of wonderful bike riding teaching. There's opportunities. If you missed out learning as a child, you'll get the opportunity to learn then as an adult. Somebody can run behind you holding onto your saddle as you gradually get the hang of it.
Which is wonderful. So we're coming towards the end of the show, and I know we've talked a lot about what people can do and what governments can do. I suppose if there was on that emergency cart that we talked about at the beginning of the show, you know, and I know we're trying to prevent things, so we need those equipments and those drugs there to prevent often as well something more dangerous from happening. What would you put on that cart as top 3 or 5 things?
Oh, it's hard to choose anything specifically. I think, well, okay, on the top is educating yourself. Do your research. Google the IPCC report, United Nations, about the climate situation. Google the UNICEF report about the state of the world's children. Look up Extinction Rebellion, because they've got some fantastic resources. See what comes up and get informed. I think that is the most important thing of all, to get better informed, and then you can start to make your own decisions about things with the information. So I would say that is absolutely number one. And then join together with others, find others, so you can find and build a sense of, find kindred, find community, feel that you're not alone with the grief of it that comes up, and the sense of sadness. And so that you can live, I mean, even if we can't save, like I said at the beginning of the program, perhaps this will be our last generation. Even if this is the last generation, we need to, and the onus is on us to live well the life we have, with what we have, with where we are, with who we are now. It's almost soul work, I'd say. It's sort of deep stuff. If we can't save our bodies, then we need to save our souls around this, to be the best people we can be of our generation here, going forward. So to be a good ancestor for whoever is going to be coming. And as a midwife, I'm welcoming new souls coming into the world every day, and it's a mixture of joy and sorrow, but we've got to just do what we can.
We've got to do what we can. We've got to get one step at a time. Every step in the right direction is a step in doing something. So listeners, please take and think of what steps you can do in your family. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jo, for being our wonderful guest. We really
thank you for having me.
Give us advice. Listeners, do tune in next week to another Parenting Hour, inshallah. Have a good week.